We recently finished the early 2024 edition of our Clarity Workshop. I like to lead the Clarity Workshop twice a year, once at the beginning of the year, and then once again mid-year to do kind of a check-in. This work is powerful, and you've surely seen other videos that I've made talking about how we create Dharma codes, Sankalpas, Vikalpas, what prevents us from living our life's purpose and such. It's based on the teachings set forth in this book called The Four Desires by Rod Stryker. The Clarity Workshop involves all of that work, plus more from the Yoga Sutras and from the book Ancient Wisdom for a New Age that Terry Hunt and I wrote. The Clarity Workshop ended recently with session 7. So there are 7 sessions. The discussion that we had at the 7th session is powerful enough to share. This isn't going to be the Dharma code that, was one of the big nuggets, nor is it going to be a Sankalpa exercise where we create a tangible, achievable goal of our soul's intention. But these suggestions from the yoga tradition are so universal and they're so beautiful that I wanted to give you this little gift from our workshop. I like to call the after unit of the Clarity Workshop staying clear and moving forward. Now, the before unit would be preparation for the actual workshop itself. The during unit is the actual work of the workshop where we meet and do the exercises. And then we move into the remainder of our life, which is what I am calling the after unit, staying clear and moving forward. How do you put the rubber onto the road? How do you put one foot in front of the other and make the changes? And so there are 5 ways to do that. How do we stay clear and move forward? There are 5 ways. So first of all, those of you who are familiar with yoga philosophy will know practice is imperative. To live your best life, to make the changes that your soul wants you to make in the physical world, we have to work on it. It's not easy to do immediately, snapping of your fingers. So it's a practice, and it's a daily practice. It's imperative. What does practice mean? Well, it could mean going to a yoga class, but it shouldn't mean only that. It should mean working on your physical body, being a steward of your body, being healthy, but also your energy. How do you breathe? It's also your thoughts. How pure are they? How pure are your thoughts? What kinds of emotions do you habitually feel? Our practice should include all dimensions of ourselves: physical, energetic, emotional, mental, and spiritual health. Practice all those dimensional optimizations daily. Yeah, daily is important. With the health of our different aspects comes drive and willpower. The power to make a difference, the power to make things happen, the power to change, the power to move forward in life, the power to overcome stagnation, overcome obstacles, learn lessons, create things, achieve things, small, medium-sized, large. That power of will and drive and motivation comes from practice. Some of us have more of it naturally than others, but it can be developed with practice. That was the first of 5 things on how we stay clear, stay seeing clearly, and how we keep moving forward. Number 2 is releasing the past. Releasing the past. Easier said than done. It's also releasing attachment. In Sanskrit, we call this vairagya. In the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which is regarded to be the quintessential text or authority on yoga in general, vairagya is the master practice, the one practice that takes you closest to final enlightenment than any other practice. Being able to release our need for things, knowing that everything we need is inside. Now, that sounds, in theory, it sounds nebulous, it sounds vague, it sounds unrealistic. But the reason why it's so important is because, as the Buddhist teaching says, attachment leads to suffering. And attachment doesn't necessarily mean physical grabbing, like I'm attached to this water bottle. I've had this thing since 2011 when I first took my very first Bikram class. Look at this thing. I'm kind of attached to this. But if I lose it, what happens? Do I feel diminished? It's been lost many times. Am I less than a person anymore? Am I going to be sad? Perhaps being attached to avoiding things as well. Many of us are attached to fear. We are afraid of failing. We are attached to the idea that we might fail. What if you released your attachment to fear of failure? Fear of failure didn't exist for you. You'd try a lot more stuff, wouldn't you? You'd probably succeed at a lot more things because you would try more things. It's a numbers game. The idea of letting go is imperative as well. So practice and letting go of the results of your practice. Is that faith that things work out? Maybe. Maybe you could call it faith. I don't call it faith, though. I call it a knowingness that everything is as it should be. Everything does work out in the end. And if things seem painful, if things seem hard, it relates to karma, it relates to lessons we need to learn, and this too shall pass. If things seem wonderful, this too shall pass. Don't be attached to the wonderful. Is that pessimistic? I don't believe it is. I believe it's real. All right, number 3, lean on others to help. Connect yourself to amazing people who support you and who you support. No one's a solo practitioner, and if you think you are, you're being a little bit too selfish, perhaps. We are citizens of the human family, we're citizens of the planet, and we're stewards of, like I mentioned earlier, our bodies, but also of the planet and of our family. I need help, you need help, and why not help each other? Because many of us need the same kind of help. In our Clarity Workshop, we partner up as what we call Dharma buddies. The reason for that is, It's easy to hide. Do any of you have rugs with big lumps of stuff under the rugs that you've tried to hide there? I do. What about a closet full of whatever you shoved in there from years ago or from weeks or months ago? If you have a friend who cares about you and supports you, it's harder to hide and it's not always comfortable, but guess what? Achieving greatness isn't so easy or else everyone would do it. So let's lean on our amazing community. Have a genuine friend who you can keep accountable if they allow you to, and you can ask to keep you accountable to your goals that you know and they know you want to achieve. All right, number 4. In order to grow spiritually, it's important that we develop a worldview. How do we see the world around us? And how do we see ourselves in the world? And developing the worldview is not enough in and of itself. It's continually, not just creating it and then locking it up in a box and saying, that's my view and I'm never going to change it. Continually contemplating it in your meditations, in your daily activities, and evaluating your worldview and being willing to modify your worldview if your clarity of vision sees something that is new and makes sense. And that leads me to number 5, being honest with ourselves about how we show up in the world. So developing this worldview is the first step, but then increasing our participation in the world. Yeah, I know that might sound strange. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go out and be a social butterfly or go out and start a new foundation for charity or something, but we're all, whether we believe it or not, we're participating in the world. Even if you give up all your material possessions and move to the jungle or move to a mountain monastery and become a sannyasin, you're still participating at a certain degree. Why? Because you have energy that translates to others. You have thought forms that travel to others. You're part of the conscious layer of our planet, and you affect others and we affect you. So you're never isolated, even if you're physically separated from society. How do we increase our participation in mindful ways? Well, if you learn some new information that challenges your worldview, honestly ask yourself if you're willing to modify or change your worldview. Ask yourself that. Are you willing to change your belief system? I'm not saying you should change. I'm not saying we need to change. Some of us probably do. But if you learn something new, are you first of all willing to listen? Are you open-minded enough to consider that what you believed either isn't true anymore or it wasn't true in the first place and you still believed it? Are you willing? So this is number 5. This is about being honest with ourselves. My cat just knocked something over. Being honest with ourselves. If we held on to something so tight that we refuse to let it go, we're not going to grow spiritually. Vairagya is also letting go of what we believe to be true. When our vairagya increases, when we practice this independence from shackles to things, we are shackled and tied to things, whether they're ideas. The world is this way and I know it is and I ain't changing. I know the government is screwing me in every way. I'm just joking. Or I know that society is evil. Or what are some of the other long-held firm beliefs that some of us have, right? Taxes are bad. Or all men or women are cheaters. No. When we loosen our shackles to things, we can then emerge from the chrysalis of confinement and fly weightless from the bounds of the physical. All right, how willing are we to change? Other questions we can ask ourselves to help us increase our vairagya. Do you compromise? Do you make compromises? Is it your way or the highway? Or are you willing to consider molding and shifting a little bit if the circumstances ask you to do so? Are you a team player? Do you forgive? How easily do you forgive? Forgiveness can be viewed as all or nothing. In this context, it's helpful to look at it as that. Many of us can say that we forgive, but there's still a little bit of energy there. There's still a little 1 milligram of animosity there. So did you forgive? Well, it could be considered that you did for the most part, but you're still hanging on. Or it could be considered that if you don't do it 100%, you didn't do it. So I'll let you decide what forgiveness means to you and ask yourself if you are pretty good about forgiveness. And that applies to yourself too. Do you forgive yourself? But of course, do you forgive others? Do you forgive the political candidate that won the election that you didn't vote for? Do you forgive? Or do you hold? See, the thing is, if we hold on to this animosity and anger, what are you solving the problem? The anger might fuel you to take action to rally the troops to protest, but does it benefit your life to do that? You know, some of us, our dharma is to be activists. For many of us, it's not though. For many of us, when we hold animosity, it causes internal strife, which manifests as illness, sickness, depression, unhappiness, worse. How often do we give to charity? How often do we give? How often do we do charitable acts? And when we do charitable acts, are we looking for something in return? Or are we okay with doing them anonymously? Are you okay with being charitable in an anonymous fashion? How humble are you? Do you show off? Do you exaggerate? Tell extravagant stories to make yourself feel liked? Or do you practice humility sometimes? And are you okay to sit at the lowest chair at the table and not say a word? Are you okay with that? I'm not saying you should always do that. Do you always have to have the last word in conversations or arguments? Do you always need to be right? Hey, this is some of my self-talk. Do you have compassion for those that are different from you? How compassionate are you to those less fortunate than you? How compassionate are you to those more fortunate than you? Everything I've mentioned in this last number 5 item to stay clear and move forward have been relatively physical in the physical world. Now, there are ways to increase our vairagya and be honest with ourselves and be more free from the shackles of the material world that are more internal. And let's ask ourselves some of those now. How often do you meditate or pray? Is it once a week, once a season, on Easter, Christmas, or do you do it daily, twice a day? Is it intentional or is it random? How often do you consciously relax? How often do you slow down and smell the proverbial roses? Do you ever sit and focus on your breath without being told to by a yoga teacher? How often do you practice yoga? How often do you go get massages? How often do you self-reflect? How often do you ask yourself, what part did I play in this problem that I have here in front of me? What was my role in creating this situation? And am I willing to admit it? How often do you give yourself genuine compliments? Do we self-reflect in all ways? What we do wonderfully well and what we could improve on? And then it's prudent to ask ourselves, what is our connection to spirit? If you believe in that kind of thing. What is your connection to a higher power, your higher power, our collective highest energy? What is your relationship to that? If we work on these items, our degree of attachment, our degree of emotions will be lowered, and we will naturally find more peace, beauty, contentment. And then moving forward towards the life that your soul intends for you to live will be just so much easier. It'll feel like the world is conspiring to help you. As Eckhart Tolle talks about in his book, A New Earth, the concept of enthusiasm, and he describes enthusiasm slightly differently than the dictionary does. We live in God when we're enthusiastic. En theos is Greek for in God. And when we can operate in God, it's the lowercase g, by the way. The universe conspires to assist you, to propel you forward through karmic resistance to your goals because you're living in divinity, consciously connected to the source. You're no longer separated. The world wants you to be great. God, divinity, divine mother, the cosmos, whatever you call the highest, lives through us and evolves through us and experiences the physical world through us. That's why we're here. We're here to learn and grow and then send that experience back to the collective once we're done. And if we're moving towards something great, every life, every form, every energy pattern in the universe will help. It might be very subtle, but it will help. Oh, and by the way, the challenges that we experience, they're there for a reason too. It's just like exams or different lessons in school. We need to learn. If everything was so easy, what would the point be? So, daily practice, non-attachment. That is exactly what Patanjali says in Sutra, one of the best yoga sutras in the whole yoga sutras. Sutra, 112? Sutra 112. So the 12th sutra in the first chapter, Patanjali introduces yoga as the practice of calming the mind. That's what yoga is. And he says when we calm the mind, we are in our natural state. And then he says when we're not in our natural state, our mind assumes the form of whatever we're thinking about, aka the attachments. I'm the proud owner of this amazingly heavy, insulated, expensive water bottle. That's me. Don't ever take that away because that's who I am. No, I'm not. The brain, thoughts in the brain are what keep us attached. They keep us attached to physical things in the physical world. Most of the entire Yoga Sutra teaching is how to calm the mind, how to learn to control the random thought patterns of the mind so we are no longer going to be shackled. And Sutra 112 is where he begins to describe what to do. The sutra goes, the mind is calmed by persistent practice and non-attachment. Abhyasa vairagya bhyam tan nirodha. The mind is calmed by persistent practice and non-attachment. So do your practice and don't be attached to the outcome of the practice and don't be attached to anything. All right, so there you go. I hope this was at least a little bit interesting to you. I'm always interested in chatting with you about these things if you want to. I'm super passionate about all things yoga, super yoga nerdy. And of course, I'll be leading another one of these workshops in June. It's life-changing. Thanks for listening. I hope this maybe sparked some motivation to do some meditation. Be well, everyone. Namaste.